Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out the evil decline of Britain's seaside towns.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. A beach holiday in Britain might sound like a cruel joke, but believe me, for a long time, this was the peak of upper-class British culture.
But I know everyone's very worried about me, but I'm actually having a really brilliant time.
From Brighton to Blackpool, Britain's coastal towns thrived. They were the forefront of culture, of entertainment, high-class living, but then something happened.
Blackpool is one of the most disadvantaged areas in England. Poverty, unemployment, difficulty in accessing benefits and mental health all play a part in the vicious cycle of deprivation.
Okay, this is probably going to be a depressing video, but y'all be sure to go to Jimmy the Giant, like and subscribe. He makes these great documentaries. His videos usually bum me out, but I also feel like I learn new things about Britain. So, you know, there's a payoff.
Today, we will explore the rise and the fall of the great British seaside town.
I only put my heating on for so long that I couldn't afford to leave it on all day. Because
the what? I'm sorry, what did she turn on?
British seaside town.
I only put my heating on for so long that I couldn't afford to leave it on all day. Because I'd just run out of money, basically.
She had to turn her heater off. Damn.
Very good, very happy,
nice.
Very happy, yeah.
Better than being at home. It's like 3 degrees at home and raining.
It's very cold, very boring, and it's good that it's open again and we can all come out and get nice and drunk.
It's actually very interesting and very important to understand where holidaying as a premise came from. The word holiday originally refers to holy day, you know, religion. It wasn't about getting pissed on cheap vodka and Magaluf.
This lady's in the gutter.
About getting closer to God.
This lady's literally rolling in the gutter. Oh, man. Oh. I've been there.
It wasn't about getting pissed on cheap vodka and Magaluf, but actually about getting closer to God. Anyway, as time would pass into the 18th century, we would have a thing called the Grand Tour.
Have you seriously broken your arm?
Well, he's fractured.
Which arm have you broken?
Now, the Grand Tour didn't come around because Jeremy Clarkson punched someone in the face, but it was actually a revival of an old Roman tradition. Basically, this had now been adopted many, many years later by young, rich British aristocrats, which became the very first lads' holiday.
2, please. Lads.
They would visit historic sites, look at the art, the architecture, and even try and speak the local language. Hello, Kant-ish harbour. Can I have a beer, please, mate? Fucking hell. But you see, holidaying would fundamentally take a turn, with one man who is arguably the first health and well-being influencer.
Hang on. I never heard of a Roman tour. The Grand Tour was a principally 17th to early 19th century custom of a traditional trip through Europe, with Italy as a key destination, undertaken by upper-class young European men of sufficient means and rank when they had come of age, about 21. The custom, which flourished from about 1616 to the advent of large-scale rail transport in the 1840s, was associated with a standard itinerary, served as an educational rite of passage. Rome for many centuries had already been the destination of pilgrims, especially during Jubilee, when European clergy visited the 7 pilgrim churches of Rome. In Britain, Thomas Coriat's travel book, Coriat's Crudities, Crudities, published during the 12 Years' Truce, was an early influence on the Grand Tour, but it was a far more extensive tour through Italy, as far as Naples, undertaken by a collector. In essence, the Grand Tour was neither a scholarly pilgrimage nor a religious one, though a pleasurable stay in Venice and a cautious residence in Rome were essential. So even when it started, it was people from around Europe, including Britain, going to Rome specifically, and around Rome. Okay.
Dr. Richard Russell of Lewes.
Oh, look at him.
During the 1730s, Dr. Russell became very wealthy for telling people that they should go in the sea. Seawater therapy. But there was one body of water that was superior to all others, and that was Brighton. He claimed that going in the Brighton Sea was better than what they'd been doing currently, where people would visit spa towns. Dr. Russell was so successful that he built this large house where he would treat his patients. This house in Brighton was the biggest in the town, and nowadays it is known as the Royal Albion Hotel.
It's still there. Wow. The Royal Albion Hotel. Show it on a map. It looks like the rest of the town was kind of built around it. You got this main road, this park, a garden. Wow, y'all. Beautiful. Seagulls. A fountain. A fountain. A fountain. A fountain. A Ferris wheel. A fountain. A fountain. The fountain. Very nice. Permanently closed? Well, darn. Okay.
This house in Brighton was the biggest in the town,
That was
and
his
nowadays
house.
is known as the Royal Albion Hotel. After his death, the building would be let out to different people. They could stay in it and come to Brighton. And one of those people who came to this hotel was very important in the progression of the British seaside town, and that was George III.
For many years, I've been fascinated by my ancestor, King George III. History remembers him, above all, as the Mad King.
Dope.
Before we go any further with this video, I want to give a massive shout out to today's sponsor, Squarespace.
Squarespace.
You can't beat
Y'all be sure to go to Squarespace and buy a website or design a website or Squarespace it up, you know?
Anyway, back to the video. Basically, he would come to Brighton and kind of get into some debauchery. You know, he liked his gambling, he liked living the high life. And because he came to Brighton so often, over the next 40 years, the town just completely transformed. Originally, it was a little fishing village, and all of a sudden, it now became like this playground for aristocrats. And you know, aristocrats need some playthings, so things started to be built for them. In 1787, the Royal Brighton Pavilion was built.
Built by the Prince Regent as his palace by the sea, here it is, still untouched by time.
Literally just for the royals, this was for George. And like, if you really
Whoa.
just look at this building for a second, you really get a feel for this character. He rocked up in a town that he goes to for gambling and built a mosque. And it's just hilarious because this was like his pleasure palace for his hedonist lifestyle. Completely out of place, but who cares? And so a combination of these wealthy aristocrats being prescribed seawater therapy and the convenient fact that there's also loads of fun shit to do and spend your money on created the Great British Seaside Holiday Town.
Okay, what's that place called again? The Royal Brighton Pavilion. Okay. Show me on a map. Oh, it's just down the street from the hotel. Wow, look at that. It's a beautiful building. Oh my gosh. Whoa. That's, it has a lot of pizzazz, you know? This makes Buckingham Palace look like a convent. Look at that. Beautiful. Is that his bedroom? It's kind of small. Kitchen. Look at this food. Pastries. Mm-hmm. Wow. It looks expensive.
He rocked up in a town that he goes to for gambling and built a mosque. And it's just hilarious because this was like his pleasure palace for his hedonist lifestyle. Completely out of place, but who cares? And so a combination of these wealthy aristocrats being prescribed seawater therapy and the convenient fact that there's also loads of fun shit to do and spend your money on created the Great British Seaside Holiday Town.
Okay.
Anyway, aside from Brighton and its growth into becoming like this playground for the aristocrats, it would be in 1840s where everything would change.
The railways are the arteries of industrial Britain's trade. Day and night they work, feeding her
Oh,
factories,
you could
feeding
take
her
the train.
As technology rapidly accelerated in this era, Britain built the world's first railway. Don't worry, guys, you don't have to thank us. You know, we're happy to help. And in 1841,
Thank
a
you.
railway line was made between London and Brighton.
It is amazing that someone just thought to build a railway. Because it seems so weird to lay down tracks, doesn't it? It seems like at the time it would have seemed so strange.
So more and more of these seaside resorts would start to pop up all around the country. One of those places being Blackpool. In 1846, they opened a railway station and it now become much more accessible. And very
Whoa.
quickly, Blackpool became like iconic. In 1879, they pioneered electric street lighting, which led to the Blackpool illuminations where all of it was lit up, basically to be able to let you keep session until late at night. In 1865, an entire town was built specifically for being a holiday resort. Peter Brough and a few business...
That was in 1865?
In 1879, they pioneered electric
1879.
street lighting, which led to the
I was going to say, I think in America it was the 1880s. So, yeah, Britain beat us.
illuminations where all of it was lit up basically to be able to let you keep session until late at night. In 1865, an entire town was built specifically for being a holiday resort. Peter Brough and a few business boys teamed up where they bought some shitty land, some cliffs and some sand, and they built Clacton-on-Sea. And throughout these many seaside resorts, they would start building things, big facilities, these elaborate piers that would stretch out to the sea. And all of this coincided around the same sort of time as the introduction of the bank holiday in 1871. And so very quickly, people up and left their busy, horrible lives in industrial towns like London, jumped on a train to head to the sea for a health and wellness weekend.
Forget fancy foreign holidays and get ready for the best of British as we make a return trip to the toughest seaside resorts in Britain.
The blood splattered over the walls, bits of people's ears, everything. It was absolutely amazing.
The 1800s and the 1900s created a gold rush around holidaying. The difference was, as in history, was that now holidaying wasn't only for the ultra-wealthy aristocrats.
Well, that's good.
Now, even poorer people were earning just enough money to scrape together a few shillings so that they could head to the beach. But, you know, probably they're not going to be able to afford the same stuff as the aristocrats, and this led to the kind of knockoff Audi versions of Brighton. Blackpool and like Southend-on-Sea and places like this, they became your more, you know, working class beach resort. Probably they weren't quite as classy as Brighton, but they were fun. And for many of the working class people of this time, these seaside resorts gave them like a taste of a life they never had, like a taste of the high life. But, you know, probably less Mozart in a grand theatre and more Sweet Caroline in a pub. Into the 1900s.
Wow. British people do that too? Huh. They're coming to America.
Into the 1900s, these British beach coastal towns were in like a absolute boom. It was a golden age. They were just growing and growing. The local population and their economy just exploded. From selling sticks of rock, running arcades, theatres, donkey rides on a beach, building sandcastles, ice cream vendors, watching Punch and Judy shows whilst eating your fish and chips, we were now creating this culture of the British holiday. And a whole industry around it had to support that, providing tons of work, tons of jobs. Jobs that even perhaps pulled some people away from living in London, as they probably preferred this pace of life, being by the sea, doing something fun and good air quality. It offered to some people a sort of alternative lifestyle.
Yo, I have family in Florida and I go there every year, and it's so beautiful. The beaches are so nice. White sand, emerald green water, kind of clear though. You can see the bottom. And I'll lay in the ocean and float, point my feet in the direction that the waves are coming, and it'll just float on my back and let the waves bring me up and down. And I start to think, maybe I'll just move here and work at a t-shirt shop. How great would that be? Every year I consider it. Every year, the ocean seduces me. And then I come to my senses and I'm like, what the f*** are you thinking?
It offered to some people a sort of alternative lifestyle. But, you see, there was a problem.
That's a lot of people.
Bazza, Susie, Stacy, Mickey, as they were enjoying breaking their teeth on a stick of rock, ever so slowly, these once very nice upper-class British seaside towns started to get filled up with poor people. In the 1800s, there was also the invention of the steamboat and the Orient Express. These modern inventions allowed the rich people to get far away from the poors. So that's what happened. People would start to go and travel to further and further places away. And we can see these photos of like wealthy aristocrats climbing up the pyramids. And if we look really closely at the facial expressions of the women, you will see that this was the husband's idea. And so like guidebooks would start publishing the best places to go abroad with tips on local culture. And this would expand.
Panama, California. Oh, San Diego. Okay.
Would start publishing the best places to go abroad with tips on local culture. And this would expand the public's understanding of like foreign cultures and customs. Things like tipping. And we would learn that when other cultures drink tea, they don't put 5 teaspoons of sugar and a pint of milk in there.
Have a cup of tea.
Will you apologise for your
Would
comment?
you like a cup of tea?
Yeah,
If you
sure.
want, have a cup of tea.
But you see, this wasn't for the vast majority of the British public. This was really just the aristocrats and extremely wealthy middle upper class. For the rest of the British society, some cheap ice cream and some fish and chips was about all we could afford. But
That's all you need.
It was enough. But just as everything was going so well, there would be the invention of one key thing that would change everything.
As the two brothers prepare to attempt the first catapulted takeoff, man's age-old dream of flight becomes a reality.
On December the 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers dropped a brand new meta, Flight. Right after this point, it was pretty much a mad rush to try and make flight available for the masses. And much like early rail, it was very expensive, so only the very wealthy could afford to go to the Sahara Desert, you know, whilst Barry and Suze are fighting off seagulls in Bognor. But then, on the 5th of May 1962, it would all change with one flight that took off from Manchester Airport.
62.
There was something different about this flight, you know, the atmosphere was different. The smell of beer in the air, the singing of football songs. This was a working class flight.
Same song.
And their final destination wasn't Blackpool anymore, it was Mallorca. It took roughly about 60 years.
Okay. I see where this is going. So at first, the rich people went to the beach to party. Then the railroad was invented, and the poor people could go to the beach to party. Then the airplane was invented, and the rich people wanted to get away from the poor people still, so they went even further away on a plane. But then, now the poor people can get on a plane and follow the rich people. I see where this is headed.
Years from the very first flight for it to become affordable to the working class. After the war, there was what was known as the post-war consensus. This basically came from a promise to the working class of Britain. After World War II, when they went off to go die in these wars, the ones who managed to come home were promised a better life than before. They were promised housing, employment, better jobs, etc., etc.
They had it for a while,
the
right?
standard of life post-war for your average working class person had massively shot up. Very quickly, the working class started to have more money and more free time, and therefore they wanted some holidays. Toward the end of the 1900s, it became just a standard thing that you would go abroad on holiday for a week. And for the tourism industry, this was a really good thing. They now had access to a wider market of people. The working class is a much bigger market than the middle classes and the upper classes.
Right.
And so we would start to see some budget airlines that would facilitate this. You know, it might be a little bit more shaky. The seat might be made of metal, but at least you'll be in the sun soon enough, Barry. During the 60s, the 70s, 80s, and onwards, we would see a tidal wave of British people going abroad, giving rise to what is known as Brits abroad.
From the West Midlands to Magaluf, 2 British police officers have begun patrolling the streets of the Spanish resort town to help the Guardia Civil deal with troublesome UK holidaymakers.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what it is about us British people, but for some reason, when we go on holiday, we just change.
You become Americans, is what you do. We're the same.
We wake up and we've already had 2 beers by 10 a.m. By 2 p.m. you're having a fight with a local over a sun lounger. And so, yeah, you know, a very certain stereotype about the Brit abroad has grown over the years. But anyway, as time passed, there'd be a few very particular locations that would just become known for being like cheap holiday getaways. Places like Benidorm.
Benidorm. I love the Sweet Caroline motif going through this whole video. What's the name of it? Benidorm? I've never heard of Benidorm. Show me all the map. Is that in Spain or something? I know a lot of Brits go to Spain. Switzerland? No. It is in Spain. Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, it's so tiny. But it's in a perfect little cove spot. Oh my god. If the buildings weren't there, it would be absolutely beautiful. But that's a lot of buildings. Oh yeah, nice beach, beautiful water. Looks like North Florida, the Emerald Coast. Wow, wow. Yeah, that's a party town. So many buildings. Wow, that's so overgrown. Oh my gosh. The beach is beautiful though. Wow, wow.
Benidorm has been described as a British council estate in the sun. There's a whole TV show about Benidorm. Yeah, we definitely didn't improve the place. As well, you'd have these cheap, trashy holidays like going to Maga. Ibiza as well was very popular. Like Brits going to Ibiza was actually what started the UK rave scene back home here. Opening the door to the British tourist was Yeah, it was a decision they made, and they chose to do that. And, you know, I don't know if they knew what they were letting themselves in for. Instead of the classic going to a foreign country to immerse yourself in the culture, the fine taste of the food, the wine, we just brought England on holiday with us. Like, you'll go to these places and they'll have, like, English pubs, like fish and chip shops. Probably the owner is a Brit.
We begin in our hotel, called Hotel Bristol.
Shitty nightclubs that you might find in Luton. In Benidorm, there's literally a place called the English Square. Like, literally, even architecturally, it looks like a council estate. And as you might imagine, the locals didn't love it that much.
Yo, this is like Florida. Totally Florida. When I used to live in Florida, there were a lot of locals who didn't like all the tourism because they just came down for spring break, would raise hell, and then go home. But I feel like people have gone on spring break in Florida and then decided to stay. And they still have that party attitude. It's very similar.
There have been protest movements and laws passed to try and keep us under control. But you see, whilst this was all happening, much like when poor Woody saw the brand new Buzz Lightyear toy coming in and taking Andy's attention, there sat the once great British seaside resort with its hand on the window, looking out longingly. Hey guys, we've got sand here too, you know. The fall from grace from these British seaside towns wasn't like, you know, it got a little bit less busy. No, they became like the worst places in Britain. Soaring violent crime, drug addiction, homelessness, unemployment, obesity, literally lower life expectancies. There are so many we can talk about, but we'll focus on one in particular, which is Blackpool. Let's just run through some stats. In Blackpool, 1 in 6 people are clinically depressed. Unemployment post-COVID is 55%. 55% are on benefits in Blackpool. They're not able to work.
What? More than half the people are unemployed. Holy crap. Wow. Do any of y'all live in Blackpool? 27 miles north of Liverpool. Oh, I didn't realize it was so far up there. The weather looks kind of nice. Damn.
Estimated 70% of people living in Blackpool are obese. Blackpool ranks at number 1 when it comes to drug-related deaths in the whole country. Blackpool is one of the only places in England where life expectancy is actually declining, and it also has the highest violent crime rate in the whole country. It is literally unbelievable what is happening to Blackpool. And you might wonder, why has it got so bad?
So what's life like in Blackpool?
It's all crackheads, bagheads, pissheads, stabbings, all kinds of down here, bro.
It's tough, mate. It's tough. It's hard. It's you know, it's lower end. People are struggling. You know, it's drink and drugs have infested the place.
The old British resorts, they're on their arse.
Basically, I don't know if you know, but
this guy's complaining about all the drinking as he lifts up a... What's he drinking? Cider. How ironic.
Drugs have infested the place.
The old British resorts, they're on their arse.
Basically, I don't know if you know, but there is something that happened in 2008 that basically created a domino effect that has never quite
financial
ended. You see, because ultra-wealthy people needed more yachts, bankers accidentally crashed the entire global economy.
Accidentally.
When that happened, the British government went into panic. It took the UK taxpayers' money and paid these banks £137 billion.
We did the same in America, y'all. We bailed out the banks. People lost their homes. Pretty messed up. I think this created a ripple effect that we're now feeling stuff from. Even now, people don't trust the institutions because of that.
To save them. It was then reported just a year later that the banks were paying out like $7 billion in bonuses, but let's not worry about that right now. After the financial crash, the country had a decision how to recover from this. And we chose the incredibly popular approach of austerity. This meant that the government was going to cut its public spending. You know, I don't need to tell you about this, you're probably aware of it, but this meant things like less police officers, less money for the NHS, less money for welfare, less money for prison officers, less money for social housing. And whilst we were told that this wasn't going to last forever, it lasted forever, and it's still, it's 14 years now, and we're still in austerity. And then, as we're all very aware, you had COVID, cost of living crisis, and these accelerated the things that were already happening since the financial crash.
You're on that universal credit, you get 320 quid a month. I went to the bank one day, they paid me £5.82 for the month.
And so, Now, let's just picture, right? So if the whole country is having problems, where we can see everywhere, all around us, that you know, stagnation, the wages aren't keeping up with the inflation.
This guy's having a great time.
See everywhere, all around us, that you know, stagnation, the wages aren't keeping up with the inflation. It's just generally declining living standards for everyone. Imagine for a second what that means for the poorest parts of the UK.
Problem with Blackpool was Freddie Laker came along with his cheap Spanish holidays and destroyed Blackpool in one night, didn't he?
So this block of houses has just been like this for 10 years?
Yeah.
And the council have done nothing?
There's a block of 3 sort of hotels here, 3 separate hotels in this block. Yeah, they've been like this for, about a decade,
The seaside towns were already seeing economic problems because they had tied themselves entirely into tourism. UK holidays fell out of favour. You know, obviously, it's nicer to go somewhere sunny than to sit on a rainy beach in Britain. And so when you have a town whose main trade is dying, and then you have a cost of living crisis that just jacks the prices of everything up, it resulted in these seaside towns just absolutely crumbling.
Very difficult for people on low wages, which is what this town is built on. It's built on tourism and the fishing industry, which is not well paid. They can't afford to buy houses.
I've lived here since I was 15 and I rent the same room in a shared house. Despite having a full career in the military and now training as a paramedic, I won't be able to afford a house. So yeah, I'm probably going to be in a house share for the foreseeable.
These once iconic towns that spearheaded some of the most important industries that we still experience and enjoy today. We kind of just said, you know, thanks for doing all that. It was fun while it lasted. We'll catch you later. And we just left them to die.
There's people living in bus stops, there's people living in like bushes. I've seen somebody living actually in a tent on a roundabout.
You know, a disabled man on the street with just one leg, not long ago had it off. You know, on the streets, mate, like that.
Nowadays, when you jump on YouTube, I can't help but see so many videos where people will just literally take a GoPro and walk around these communities and just show how fucked up it is. You got videos by Bald and Bankrupt, Wendell, Wandering Turnip, Joe Fish, Backpacker Ben. There's quite a few like this. And I hate to say it, like dying Britain, the decline of Britain is becoming a YouTube niche. And as depressing as it is, I feel like these videos are super important at shedding a light to what is happening to our country. We have this awful pattern in Britain of like just leaving places behind, like leaving them when they fall down, we just leave them to die. Our strategy seems to be only focus on the places that are profitable right this second, right now, and the moment it dips down, just fuck them off. This attitude is a fundamental shift from what I was talking about earlier with the post-war consensus. It all switched in like the 80s with the rise of neoliberalism with Thatcher. She argued that in a country, you shouldn't burden yourself with unprofitable trades. We should cut the dead weight and focus on what we're good at. Which sounds, you know, there's logic to that. It sounds good, but we just seem to stop there. Like when an industry dies, we just say, yeah, see you later, buddy. And we don't do anything to try and, you know, develop these places, try and redevelop these places and retrain people into new emerging markets, etc. We just allow these once successful cities to just decline into poverty. And for some reason, we're okay with that.
At least there's some good art out of it. Got a Slimer thing here and just trying to look at the bright side, yo.
See, like there's dog shit everywhere.
I nearly, just coming around the corner there, was a huge,
and I pick it up
smeared.
all the time, but you walk around the town, you just see piles of shit everywhere.
Yeah.
This guy's tattoos are freaking me out. Impressive.
Pick it up all the time, but you walk around the town, you just see piles of shit everywhere.
Yeah.
Like they're closing down the multi-storey car parks, there's empty shops.
Yeah.
And it's just dying.
In my personal opinion, I've grown to believe that this trajectory for tourist towns in Britain isn't isolated. This is going to affect more and more towns as time passes. I think you're going to see a similar trajectory to a lot of towns that are kind of like middle towns, you know, towns that maybe aren't your Londons and your Manchesters, like big cities, places like, I don't know, Hemel Hempstead or Grimsby or Slough. A lot of this gets tied in with the whole death of the British high street. Like when you walk down a high street and all you see is boarded up shops, you don't just see this in seaside towns. This is happening all over Britain. Even in London, a lot of people say that the declining high street is just a response to the rise of online shopping. And whilst that is true to a degree, I think there's something deeper at play. Online shopping offers convenience and better prices. It doesn't offer experience and leisure. A beautiful high street offers that. And people like that. However, when we're in a cost of living crisis, people have less free time and they have less money. And so they are drawn towards convenience and also cheaper prices. This is the area where supermarkets and Amazon will always win. So I don't think it's just the fact that online shopping is more convenient and people are lazy or something. I think it's the way that life is currently that means that kind of high street shopping is just a luxury of time and money that probably they can't afford. And meanwhile, it doesn't seem the government does anything to try and help that. They don't try and re-incentivize people going to shop in real life.
How
In fact,
could you?
The opposite.
How
They
could
put
you?
on brutal business tax rates that make it impossible for businesses to function, where most people claim that the reason they've had to shut their business is because of tax. And this is a problem that is happening around many Western nations, and some do a better job at dealing with it than others. A lot of it comes down to decision making and zoning laws and things like that. Declining towns, declining seaside resorts is a problem that requires people to think of solutions. But you have to want to do it.
I only put my heating on for so long. I couldn't afford to leave it on all day. I'm having little nibbles instead of making proper big meals, you know what I mean? Like just now, I've just had a cup of coffee and a cake, and that's my tea.
She's just having little nibbles instead of full meals? Cake is not, maybe not cake though, right? Cake and coffee? That's not a proper meal. Oh, man.
Now, I've just had a cup of coffee and a cake, and that's my tea.
I just sometimes wish that in this country we would take a second to think, what exactly are we optimizing toward? What's the future we're trying to make here? Are we trying to make a world where we just all live in overpriced rented pods and everything gets ordered to our door from Amazon? Do we really want to completely render the public square, the public space as irrelevant, a thing of the past? Do we really want that? What exactly is our end game as a country? The more I make these videos about Britain, the more I just feel like we're sleepwalking back into the Victorian era, an era where the vast majority of people live in poverty and the wealthy live in extreme decadence. There's even been the same trend that happened in the Victorian era of people moving back to London. I found this report from The Standard where they talk about it, where they said that the number of Londoners leaving the capital to move elsewhere in Britain dropped significantly in 2023. And it says that the trends of rocketing house prices in the countryside during the pandemic has been well and truly reversed as buyers rediscover the joys of city life. I think that's a very generous read on the situation, the joys of city life. Like, don't get me wrong, I love London. But what I really think has happened is not that people just suddenly want to move to London because London's fucking sick, but more so that so many smaller towns have just really got so bad. We've been wiped out after COVID, where so many places are shut down. They all look run down now. And many towns, like some of these seaside resorts, are just lifeless and run down, criminal. And so, yeah, London becomes very attractive when it's the only place that kind of has lots of culture still. And that's mainly because the money is there. The wealth is in London. That is the exact same thing that happened in the Victorian era, where people had to leave the countryside and their agricultural lives because London became the industrial hub. Everyone had to move there to get work because, you know, working on the farm wasn't paying anymore. I don't think many people would have said the Victorians were moving because they enjoyed the joys of city life.
Is this what you think of when you think of Britain? A developed Western nation? These ramshackle streets where most people are living on benefits, struggling to get by, one step, maybe 1 week away, or even less from homelessness.
In order for smaller towns and like seaside resorts, etc., to survive, they need to be self-sustainable. They need to have their own industries and they need to have their own middle class. Middle classes bring extra money that can be used on leisure, you know, not just buying the essentials for life. As we see this middle class shrink in Britain, there will be less and less of these towns, these small towns, seaside resorts, etc. Likely, in the future, people will be forced to move around London to huddle around to get a few breadcrumbs, and we will look back at these seaside towns and see that we missed a warning. They were a looking glass for us to see what the future of Britain might look like if we don't do something about this very soon. That was a depressing one. I'm sorry, lads. If you enjoyed that, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Join the Discord. We can chat about these topics more. You can catch me on stream. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Y'all be sure to go to Jimmy the Giant, like and subscribe. What's the answer, though? What do you do? This reminds me a lot of the mining towns, you know? The mines are closed. What do you do? What else can you do? People aren't going to the beach in Britain anymore. What do you do? What's the answer? I don't know. It's not like you can force people to go on vacation to a certain place. I mean, you could restrict British people from going to Spain, right? But then, like, that's like, something about that feels really wrong, you know? And they'll just end up going to France or some shit, right? I don't know. Do any of y'all live in Blackpool or in a seaside town? I think you do. I have to say, though, as bad as it looks like it's getting, in Florida, there are towns that have been wiped out by hurricanes. Totally wiped out. My mom lives in this town called Cedar Key. The grocery store's gone. There are little businesses downtown. The building's gone. Like, it's just wiped out. So not only are people not going there on vacation anymore, you can't even live there, really. Like, there's electricity and running water, but not much water. You gotta drive 45 minutes away to another town to get groceries. If the building is still there, the whole first floor is wiped out to the studs. So it could be worse, you know? At least you don't have hurricanes as much. Maybe you will with global warming, though. I don't know. It sucks. But yeah, this is a bummer, but it's good to spread the word. Let people know this is going on, right? Maybe some of you that live in Britain will go on vacation to Blackpool and brave the crime and everything and put a little money into their economy. Maybe. I don't know. That is interesting that it's going back to the Victorian age where people are moving to London. That's interesting. I think if I lived in Britain, I would probably be a Londoner. I like the city. I like the energy of a big city. But I gotta get away sometimes. I gotta get away. And I don't want to get on a plane. Honestly, I would rather take a train to a little seaside town for my nature rather than get on a plane and get motion sickness. The air pressure changes, mess with my poops. Stay in Britain, y'all. You don't need to go to Spain. You don't need to go to Ibiza. Stay in Britain, right? Do it. Stay in Britain. Go to Blackpool. Go to Leeds. Or is that on the coast? Go to Grimsby. Britain first. Right? Yeah, be sure to go to Jimmy the Giant, like and subscribe. I'd like to thank my patrons. I'd like to thank my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank y'all for watching this with me, and I'll see you next time.